All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Very fascinating Parsha today, Parshat Chukat, aptly named because the word chok, although it has a number of different definitions, essentially we popularly translated as a law that doesn't have an apparent reason. Kashrut, tzitzit, and as we'll see, of course, the main topic of this parsha. So there's a lot of inexplicable incidents and stories, topics taking place in this week's parsha, and we're going to try to look at three of them in a share that I call spiritual healing, maybe something we're all in need of. So we have three primary topics in this week's Sedra: the Para Aduma, the red heifer; the Maaseh Merivah, the story of Moshe and the hitting of the rock at what's come to be called Mei Merivah, the waters of strife; and then the story of the snake on the pole. And we want to try to see if we can connect these three seemingly diverse topics into one theme. And each one is complex and confounding. First of all, let's take the Para Aduma, of which many questions immediately jump out at us in this ultimate compound that's going to affect spiritual perfection or spiritual health for those upon whom it is administered by the Kohen. So first of all, why are we using a cow, the Para Aduma, the red heifer? Why is that the instrument that ultimately comes to purify us? Why does it have to be completely red? What is it about the color red? And why is the Para Aduma in the classic question that even Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon the Wise, said he could not answer? Why is it Metaher Tameim and Metame Tahorim? Why does it make pure those who are impure, while at the same time making impure the Kohen who administers it? So it has a paradoxical opposite effect from this very same compound. The Mei Merivah, these waters of strife, cause us to ask, what did Moshe do wrong by hitting the rock? And it was such a severe sin or mistake that he is unable to do tshuva. He will demonstrate, he will pray to Hashem throughout the rest of the Torah, especially in Parshat Ve'et, please God, don't take this one last wish away from me. I want to enter Eretz Yisrael. But of course, he will be turned down time and again. So what did he do wrong? How did he demonstrate what the Torah calls a lack of faith? Ya'an lo ha'amantam bi. You did not demonstrate faith in me, and that had a negative influence on the people. What does that have to do with hitting the rock? And thirdly, the story of the snake. Why do we use this symbol, which is, as we know, not a very positive symbol in Jewish literature, beginning already in the Garden of Eden? What was the sin of the people at the time that required healing? And how did a snake, which usually we're scared of because we don't want to get snake bite, how did the snake of all creatures heal? So let's go and let's dig into this. First of all, why a cow? So the rabbis tell us that seems quite obvious, that the Para Aduma is coming not only to achieve tahara, spiritual balance, perfection, but also to atone for the sin of the golden calf, another cow, the Egel Hazav. Gold has many symbols to it: success, nobility, even righteousness. We use this phrase, It's as good as gold to tell you about something which is authentic. Red, on the other hand, has different connotations. One of them, or some of them, being quite the opposite of gold, being negative. Red, which stands for sin or for stain, perhaps for bloodshed, for guilt. We know that we're told that a person's face will turn red when they're embarrassed, when something that they've done wrong is brought to their attention and they know they did wrong, so their face will turn red. In some ways, we say that it's almost like killing a person if you insult them and you embarrass them and cause their face to turn red. So the redness is telling you it's almost as if you killed them by attacking their reputation and their integrity. So you have to be careful about that. It was necessary to use the very same symbol, the cow, to reverse the sin of the calf, of the egel. And it becomes the antidote to the spiritual malady, the sickness, the illness, the defect in the people's composition that is affecting them. All red, the cow has to be a totally red heifer. We searched today to try to find a cow, and then we always from time to time hear, oh, they discovered that they found a cow somewhere, in Texas or in cow country that's completely red. It never really works out. In all of history, we say there were only 9 parot aduma because they could use that compound over and over by mixing it. They mixed it with water and it lasted for a long time. By tradition, the 10th paraduma will be found when Moshiach comes, or someone to say, if you find the red heifer, then it's a sign that Moshiach is imminent. But it was necessary to use a cow to make up for the cow, in a sense, because when you want to correct a neshama, a soul that's out of balance, says Maimonides, the Rambam, you have to often swing the pendulum to the other extreme. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're taking the symbol that stood for almost a form of idolatry, and we're using it to stand for the opposite, for spiritual purity. So this is in keeping. The Rambam talks about this. If you're a stingy person, then you should give a lot of money, force yourself to spend. If you're a loner and you're receding from society, try, in order to correct and put this into balance, go the other extreme and integrate into society. This is one of the reasons why we say that Lo Aleinu, a mourner, an Avel, has to come out into public 3 times a day to say Kaddish. When a person suffers a loss, they want to withdraw. They feel nobody can share their pain, so they automatically recede into the background, and they don't want to be out in public. People ask them all kinds of difficult questions. So Chazal very wisely said, at least 3 times a day, you have to go into public, because you can't fulfill your obligation by saying that Kaddish inside the house privately. So if you want health, if you want healing, the spirit, like the body, has to be in balance. Today, that's very much in vogue in terms of modern health, to have a balance to the body. So the idea of the opposite reactions, mitame, mitaher tameim, umitame tahorim, means that the same personality traits of a person can have the opposite effects. That we see this in all kinds of midot, in all kinds of character and personality traits. So take, for example, pride. If you stand up for your country, you stand up for Israel, pride is good. But if you're conceited and filled with ego and too prideful, that's bad. Stubbornness, well, it can be something which, in a sense, makes you impure or purifies you, right? If you refuse to accept somebody else's apology, that's bad. But if you refuse to give up your adherence to mitzvot, if you refuse to give in to terrorism despite the pressure that might be put on us, that's good stubbornness. So you see each trait, even stinginess. If you hoard all your money, that's bad. But if you zealously guard the property of your friend, what we call chas al mamona shel chavero, then that's a good form of stinginess. So you see that what's happening with the Egel Hazav versus the Parah Aduma is that we're using the same creature, but we're using it in a way to correct our problem. So the Parah Aduma symbolized to Bnei Israel, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be tahor, pure? Then take that thing which corrupted you, the eternal, indestructible, precious gold of the Egel Hazav, which you worshipped, and make ashes out of it. Take it to the extreme, grind it up so that you can't use it anymore. Take the haughtiness of gold and descend to where you actually drink the ashes, and then use the Parah Aduma ashes similarly to keep you humble, because part of the punishment of the Egel Hazav, they ground it up and they made people drink from it. So we see already we're developing this theme. Now comes the story of hitting the rock. What did Moshe do wrong? So there are many answers. First of all, he was told to speak to the rock and he hit the rock, even though previously he had been told to hit the rock. But now maybe the people were at a different level, now to speak to them. And then he insults them. He says, Shimu Nahamorim, he calls them rebels. And he hits the rock twice. Once isn't enough. So all of these imply a kind of anger, right? If you can't dialogue, but you have to strike out in violence, then anger has taken over you. So we see Moshe's anger, this was embedded in his personality. It was a trait that somehow had gone haywire. And here too, we see the dual-edged sword, the two sides of anger. It's very, very hard when you're trying to change these traits. It doesn't come easy. The sin, the Egel that had represented sin, the Meraglim, the spies, the same thing. This was an issue of their personality and their midot. And it's hard to change those things. If ever you're forced to choose between a religious, amoral person or an irreligious, moral person, you always would take the latter. You always would take the irreligious, moral person, because morality is very hard to teach. Religion is easy to teach. You can take somebody and, kind of turn them on towards religion, and soon you see all of a sudden they're speaking, they're talking the talk, they're wearing the clothes. People who never said a word of Yiddish before, suddenly they're even speaking Yiddish. And that's relatively easy to affect compared to moral traits, which are very hard to get a person who is naturally angry, or a person who is not reliable or dishonest, to change over. So this is why the sin of the golden calf was the punishment was relatively mild for the sin. 3,000 people had to die, but it's infinitesimal compared to what the punishment or the effect of the spies, the Meraglim, was. A whole generation, 600,000 people will die out. And that's very, very different. Hard to fix those kinds of problems. Hashem said we'll have to wait for the new generation and reboot. Anger is something which the Torah says in its extreme form, anger, is actually a prototype of avodah zarah, of idolatry, because it's a lack of faith. When you don't ultimately accept the will of Hashem, which should cool your anger somewhat, that in effect you're rejecting the whole concept that Hashem is guiding the world. Yes, we should get angry in places where we need to, but where it's not called for, it's very self-destructive, and it even gives off the signal that, well, this world is out of kilter, it's not functioning. Even to say, as people do in anger, ein din ve'ein dayan, there is no judge, there is no judgment. And of course, that is a very anti-God philosophy. Note, by the way, that Moshe and his brother Aaron's principal personality traits, which made them great, ultimately are their undoing. Moshe has this righteous indignation, this I'd say very positive form of anger when he sees the Egyptian striking the Israelite, and he comes to his defense when he's angry with Datan and Aviram and their rebellion, which is really against God. When he's angry with Paro and stands up to Paro, you have to have a certain amount of good anger there. And he even stands up against God. He gets angry with God and says, God, when Hashem wants to punish us too strictly, Moshe says, you can't do that. That's a bad mistake, God. And as far as I'm concerned, I will not let you do it. And he makes all kinds of threats. It's pretty strong in that character trait, but it's always in defense of the Jewish people. He takes on all comers when it benefits Am Yisrael. But that same trait, if it swings too far to the other side, well, ultimately it causes Moshe to lose his leadership and remain behind while the rest of the nation travels on to Israel, or those who survive. So that anger really, again, it got out of hand. And like we say with the Parah Aduma, that you have to know which way to use it. Anger, when it serves a righteous purpose, is a good thing. You should get angry when you see injustice, but letting it go too far is self-destructive. Aaron is the opposite. He's a lover of peace. That's what he's known for. Rodev Shalom, Ohev Shalom. But when he seeks peace in the incident of the golden calf, then he is punished, which is his real sin, although technically he's also punished for the rock, even though Moshe is the one who does the hitting. So the rabbis say it's really kind of a subterfuge that they don't want to come out and publicly blame him for what happened with the golden calf, but that's really what the problem was. So although he was a person of peace, which is a good thing, in retrospect, he goes too far to agree with the people's desire to make that golden calf. So in looking back, Moshe should have sought peace and been flexible as opposed to his trait of anger, and Aaron should have been stubbornly firm and inflexible in contrast to his midah, his trait of seeking peace. So you see again this kind of turnaround in the same trait. And now we can look at the story of the snake. And the Torah, it's a relatively short incident. The people journey into the land of Edom, Vatiktsar nefesh ha'am baderech, and the spirit, their attitude becomes short, and they speak out against God, against Moshe. Why did you take us out of Egypt to die in the desert? We have no bread, we have no water. Nafshenu katsa, our souls are disgusted, it's translated. Belechem haklokel, with this mun that quickly spoils. So God sends against them fiery serpents, nefashim srafim, They bite the people, many die, and then they come in, the people, and say to Moshe, we agree, we have sinned, we spoke out against God, we spoke out against you. Pray to God to remove the snakes, the poisonous, biting, deadly snakes. And Moshe prays, but God does not remove the snakes, strangely enough. He says to Moshe, instead, make another snake, the same instrument, the same figure. Make this snake, which he calls a saraf, and put it up on a pole, simoto al nes, and whoever is bitten and looks at this pole with the snake, they will be cured. So Moshe makes a snake out of copper, nechash nechoshet, puts it on the pole, and then indeed tells the people, if you've been bitten, look at this copper snake and you will be cured. Very, very strange story about the snake, and about this nachash nechoshet. So what's going on here? The people have this shortness of spirit. From the word, I would say, kates, their patience has come to an end. Their ability to confront all the dangers of the desert, that has just finally gotten to them. And the rabbis tell us what's going on here, in a sense, is the same thing that happened with the golden calf and also with the hitting of the rock. The people just lost faith, mostly in themselves, not just in God or in Moshe, but mostly in themselves. Just as in the golden calf, they felt they couldn't reach God without an intermediate. So when Moshe was delayed, they had this calf built. And also in the story of the spies, they lose faith in themselves that they could conquer the land. They use this word and they say, Ephes ki az ha'am. The other nations are strong, and they throw in the word Ephes, which means literally in Hebrew today, Ephes, a nothing, a loser, reflecting upon themselves that they're incapable. So they complain here about the mun. The mun is interesting. We say it tasted like anything you wanted it to, but another quality of the mun, it's relative, the taste is relative to the spiritual excellence of a person's neshama. The greater their spiritual essence, the better it tasted. So here they are, maybe because they're losing faith in themselves, and their neshama is affected, their soul is unhealthy. So maybe the man didn't taste so well. Comes along this nachash, the symbol of lowliness, the lowest creature on earth, and it bites them, showing them perhaps that their sin consisted of acting in a lowly manner, as if they were less than righteous and godly and holy people, that they denied they were elevated souls. And so the snake comes and says, well, if you think of yourself as low, then to demonstrate that, we will bite you. And then Moshe makes this nachash nechoshet. It's not just a play on words, because the word snake, nachash, is included in the word nechoshet, copper. But it's clear that's what God intended. It is a play on words, but it's an important play. That first of all, the nachash is a creature which is flexible, bendable, pliable, serpentine, in a sense, unsure of its way, seeming to go in different directions, like when you serpentine. That's why in Hebrew, by the way, the word to guess is linachesh, from the same exact verb. They're full of doubt. And the nechoshet is something straight. The copper, the pole, it's firm, it's rigid, it's sure of purpose. So it's very different than the snake. It's the opposite. Says the Ramban, why did the snake have to be made of that material, of the copper? Because he says, it's just sending you the message, nachash nechoshet, that the cure is in the disease. Very similar to what happens when a person has the flu. What do they do to cure the flu? They inject you with the flu vaccine. So here too, that if you want to be cured, in other words, the people say, tell God, please get rid of the snakes. And God says, no, I'm not getting rid of the snakes. The snakes are going to be around, but I'm going to show you how to overcome the snakes. If you have a different image of yourself and you confront your weakness, your personality flaw, the crack in your observance of mitzvot, then you can cure this ill, in a sense, with its own venom. You'll conquer it. It doesn't have to be removed. That's attacking the symptom and not the disease itself. The lowliness of the people was signified by the lowly snake. But if you raise it on a pole and you force the people to look up, to elevate their neshamot, to realize that we are an Am Kadosh, that we have the ability to rise up, then you will not have to worry about the snakes biting you. The Torah calls the snake a saraf. Saraf is an interesting word because it can mean poison, but it can also is a word that means angels. Seraphim are angels. So in a sense, you see this dichotomy, as we saw with the calf and the cow, the two sides of it, and we saw that the two sides of the anger of Moshe, the good anger, the bad anger, the good cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. So here you see too the same idea of the snake, which is naturally a negative symbol becoming positive. We're told, put it up on a pole. The Torah here uses the word nace for pole. Of course, that's chosen by design, that trying to tell the people, understand, you complained about the mun, but the mun is a nace. Says God, I'm giving you daily miracles, daily nisim, and the greatest miracle of all may be the mun, because we had it for 40 years, and it fed us every day. And what other miracle do you have that lasts for 40 years? And it proved that the Am Yisrael were holy people. They deserved miracles. Otherwise, we never would have had the man. If you think of yourself as holy, as kadosh, as tahor, you will be such. You will be pure. You will be holy. And that's why the next stop on the road, vayachanu be'avot, they stop, says the Torah, in a place called Avot. And it's not coincidental. Avot, of course, means our ancestors. We are holy not just because of ourselves, but we have this in our DNA that we inherited from the Avot, from Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Imahot, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. If we remember them, if we know that we have Schut Avot, when we say the Amida every day, the first thing we do is we name drop and we remember the Avot. So they will give us of their merit, and we will be able to survive against all of these challenges. And finally, just to refer similarly to the fight against Amalek that we are fighting today. Amalek symbolizes doubt. Amalek, the word Amalek equals in Gematria Safek, doubt, because they instill a doubt in our ability to defeat them. They try to say that we're the evil ones, we're the enemy, we're the ones who are the danger to society, rather than they themselves, and they make us question ourselves, as they're trying very hard to do today, to organize protests to say the Jews are the problem, the Zionists are the problem. But we confronted this enemy for a long time, going back to the days of the Torah. There are arch enemies for all of history. So there too, just like in the symbol of the snake on the pole, so Moshe holds up his hands when they go to battle with Amalek to signal to us, look up to Shamayim, look up to the heavens. Remember that if you're loyal to Hashem, then God will protect us, will save us. And the Torah uses the strange phrase, Vayihi Adav Emunah. Remember the story where the Moshe's arms are held up by Aaron and Hur to keep his hands elevated. And he uses this phrase, the Torah uses the phrase, his hands were emunah, which means faithful, but obviously it's a strange word to use, but it's sending that message that if we look up to Hashem, if we have emunah, we have faith, and we cling to the ways of our avot, the traditions of the Jewish people, then no army and no enemy is going to be able to defeat us. So all of this in this phenomenal stories in Parshat Chukat that seem to be inexplicable from the word chukat, but when you really stop to examine it, it makes a great deal of sense. I think we together figured out something that maybe mystified generations or other people who don't delve too deeply into this phenomenal Sedra. So thanks to everybody for joining in, and we hope to be back next week, same time, same place, and hope that everybody is having a great summer. We hope and pray that if there is going to be some deal, that it's not to our detriment, and that's not a simple thing, and that Hashem will deliver back to us, our people, the hostages, help those who are wounded, and honor the name and the memory of those who have paid the ultimate price. We'll end with the bracha, and we'll end with the tefillah for the chayalim. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov Hu Yivarech et Chayalei Tzva Haganah Yisrael Haomdim Al Mishmar Tzeinu Borei Eloheinu Migvul HaLevanon Ad Mibar Mitzrayim Min Hayam Gadol Ad Lavo HaRava B'Yabasha Ba'avir U'Bayam Yitein Adonai Toiveinu Hakamim Aleinu Nigafim Lifnehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor V'Yatzil et Chayaleinu Mikol Tzara V'Tzukah Mikol Negu Machala B'Shlach Bracha B'Tzlacha B'Chol Masei Dehem Yadbir Sonenu Tachtehem V'Yatreim B'Chet Yeshua B'Ter Nitzachon B'Kuyam B'Hem HaKatuv K'Adonai Elohechem Ha'olechim Lachem Lilachem Lachem Imoivechem L'Oshia Etchem V'Nomar Amen. Shabbat Shalom, B'Sorot Tovot to everybody. Thank you for joining in.